I'm Drew Biddle. I'm a mental health practitioner with Monter Daniels Academy. I've been there since last October, and
Yay!
Hey, welcome back, Terry.
That was it. Oh my God, I was so confused. Thank you. I was like, where is it? It's different from a me. All right. Can we take it from the top?
Yeah, that's totally fine. Go ahead.
All right. So my name is Terry Kendall. I'm not too tech savvy, obviously, but I am the lead support for mental health practitioners and specialists of mental health. Prior to this, I was a school psychologist for 25 years, most of that with JCPS. So, Drew, did you introduce yourself already?
Well, so I started to. I'll do it again though. So I'm Drew Biddle. I'm a mental health practitioner with Monter Daniels. I've been there since last October. Before that, I worked for 7 years as a mental health counselor, so I've got a little bit of background there as well.
Nice. Okay. So this is going to be a really interesting presentation because there's going to be a lot of questions to help with introspection to really figure out what you do now as opposed to what other things you can do. So hopefully you get a lot of much needed information because the world is crazy and we are all a little bit more stressed than usual. So for all purposes, let's start off with what is stress. Stress can be psychological, physiological, and behavioral. By definition, it's a mental or emotional tension from adverse or challenging circumstances. Now, what we do know is stress is universal. If you're human, you experience stress. It's just part of being human, and being human is hard. It's also subjective. So what stresses one person out may not necessarily stress another person out. And just as you said, it's necessary. I mean, you have to have something that gets you up and moving and going and doing. We can't be two slackers or we'll never get anything done. So it's based on interpretation of events. But however, the problem is if it's chronic and it's high a lot, it can impact our health. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. But for now, let's look at the sources. So can you just go back really fast? So it can be financial, work, or relationships. So external sources, we all know. We all know what it's like to have financial problems or work stresses or relationship or even health challenges. But here's another thing that we don't always think about is that those internal sources. We have our own thoughts and our own stories. We can make events way worse than they are at times. And that's when we have control over those thoughts and stories. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more later. Okay, I'm ready for the next one.
Sorry, I had my office mate distracting me.
So our ancestors had some very real, scary physical challenges, such as fighting wild animals, probably fighting a lot more people than before. You know, it was just a more physical time back in the day. So our body has developed adaptive responses for this. Now, let's take a look just briefly about what happens when we get stressed. Our frontal cortex receives that information and we see it as a threat. The message then goes to the hypothalamus in your brain, which that regulates those hormones, cortisol and adrenaline. Now our heart starts pumping up to 400% increase. We become hyper alert. So our blood pressure rises, our breathing quickens, our eyes dilate, our muscles tighten, and our airways widen. Now the blood moves away from digestion. We don't need that. Skin and kidneys, because we don't need to eat. We definitely don't want to bleed too much, and we don't want to lose fluids. We need all of that. But the blood heads towards the muscles because that's where it's needed. Now our inflammatory part of the immune system revs up. It's ready to attack. Fat cells release more fat. Blood platelets turn sticky, so they clot better. So all of this is very physiological. Liver converts that glycogen, otherwise known as fuel, into glucose for energy. And here's our fight, flight, and freeze response. So a lot happens. Yeah. All right. Now on this slide, we notice a lot of those health effects that can happen. Stress is linked. I mean, research has shown it's linked to heart disease, high blood pressure, weakened immune system, obesity, diabetes. So yes, it's very important to listen to our body. So if you look up on these points, you see the bullet points, you're going to see sleeping issues like insomnia or oversleeping or nightmares. You see weight gain or loss, stomach pain, irritability, panic attacks, bad habits can develop. So you've got smoking, drinking, drug use, just heartburn, social isolation, fatigue, nausea. All of these can just be mental that's affecting the physical. But here's the thing, neuroscientists have finally figured out that mind and body are the same. And that should help us know that to manage our stress is really important to our physical health. Okay. All right. So being an educator is a really tough job. And now with all the stress in education, trying to find new ways to teach our children, it's even harder. And I always say that, like, when we're around kids and our coworkers, that fills our love cup, right? I mean, kids hugging, being present with us, their smiles, all of that gives us a lot of satisfaction in our jobs. I know it was the best part about my job when I was a school psychologist, but now we don't get to see that all the time. So our stress is higher. But I tell you, it's really important to learn about stress management. So for our purposes, it's a set of techniques to help people deal with stress by analyzing stressors and finding positive ways to minimize its effects. So basically, it's important to understand your stress. So where do you feel that? What are your body cues when you first start to feel stress? Or maybe it's chronic and you're noticing you're getting more headaches or you're getting more stomach aches. But what does your stress look like as an individual? And then also identify stressors. So what's stressing you out? Where's those areas of your life that are very stressful, and what can you do about it? What are those thoughts and stories you're repeatedly telling yourself, and what can you do about it? And then learning your stress signals that you're dealing with. The first things that tell you you're stressed, you need to deal with something. And here's something to think about. What are your current strategies? What are your go-to strategies? Are they healthy? Are they unhealthy? Are they helpful? Are they unhelpful? So just thinking along those lines is a good place to just get started.
Yeah, absolutely. And excuse me. And I think, one of the things that I probably should have, we probably should have started off the presentation with this, but if anybody has any questions or, there's something pressing that you really want to ask about on the current slide, please feel free to speak up. I can't see the chat, but I think Terry might be able to, and I know we have other people watching the chat, so please feel free to pipe up if you have a question. But like Terry was talking about, there's a lot of things that can impact our stress levels. Thoughts are something that I know personally, like I've dealt with this. I think pretty much everybody does at some point in their lives, and some people it gets to the point where it's just like self-destructive. And the thoughts can be about a lot of different things that can contribute to stress. It can be the past, it can be the present, or it can be the future. It doesn't really matter. It's a wide variety of subjects too. Sometimes it's positive stress, like Terry was talking about. Like sometimes we need that extra push, or we need that extra little oomph to get us to where we need to be. So it's like, okay, I know that this important project is coming up for me, and I need to use my stress to fuel me to make sure that I'm getting the work done that I need to get done. Sometimes it can do the opposite, and it can become a little negative, a little overwhelming, and it gets to the point where it's like, okay, geez, I don't know what to do to deal with all of this, because I'm just like, I just want to shut down. I want to turtle up. I can't function. But sometimes, ways that we can combat that are the grateful thoughts, and some of those thoughts, it's like, like, I'm thankful for this thing that's in my life. And Terry's going to talk more about gratefulness later on in a little bit more detail, but it's just kind of things to have in the back of your mind. Where are my thoughts is what it comes down to. Kind of that metacognition. So thinking about your thoughts. And I think sometimes we don't always have the time to sit down and think about this stuff a lot, because we have so much going on. We're a very busy culture. And so we don't always have the time to say, you know what, I'm just going to sit down and think about what I'm thinking. Like, that's not exactly a daily kind of thing for us, typically speaking. And so, but if we can pay attention to that a little bit more, and it can come from a lot of different places. You can notice, you know what, like, I'm not feeling the best. I noticed that I'm sick to my stomach today. Like, what have I been thinking about today? Oh, right, I've been thinking about this stressful thing that's going on. Oh, and right, and that made me think about this other thing. So if we take some time to kind of get out of our head a little bit and really look at what's going on with us, then sometimes that can help us refocus and decrease those stress levels some. Sometimes it's taking a break, and sometimes, depending on how intense the stuff is that's going on, sometimes just taking a break and saying like, oh, I'm just going to walk away from this for a minute might not be enough. So sometimes we have to find not just a distraction, but a meaningful one. So, Terry and I talk about this a little bit later, but sometimes, so like if you really enjoy a good laugh and you haven't watched this comedy special that you've been wanting to watch, that might be the time to do it, or at least watch a clip of it or something that's going to be meaningful for you. Makes a big difference. Or sometimes just doing something positive or productive. Doing something that makes you feel like, you know what, I'm contributing to my purpose. I'm serving the world in some form or fashion. That in itself can kind of break that monotony of those stressful thoughts and feelings. So one of the questions that we wanted to pose to you all is, are there beliefs about yourself, people, or situations that you can challenge a little bit? It doesn't necessarily mean like, oh, I'm a bad person for thinking these things. It's just, hey, you know what? Maybe I need to look at this a little bit more because this has been sticking around quite a bit. Feelings is another thing that I was hinting at before, where it's like, sometimes these can contribute to our stress. Sometimes these can alleviate our stress. And sometimes these are a warning sign that we're getting overworked or overstressed. I think, again, much like the metacognition thing, we don't always sit down and think about this. So I think one of the really important things for us is to acknowledge our feelings in the first place and say, like, wow, I'm feeling X, Y, and Z, whatever the feelings are that's going on. And it is perfectly normal to feel more than one thing at once. I know that sometimes we don't always want to acknowledge that or agree to that, but there was a beautiful picture of that that I used to have in my office, where it was like this big angry face in the middle, and it's like, what's behind that anger, right? So it's the same thing with stress. So I'm feeling really stressed. Well, what's behind that stress? Well, I'm a little bit worried. I'm a little bit anxious. I'm a little bit depressed. I have all these different things that are feeding into this stress. So if we can kind of break that apart a little bit and examine that a little bit more, I think a lot of the times that'll kind of bring that stress level back down some. But feelings can protect us and they can guide us. And then sometimes it's the exact opposite, just like our thoughts. Sometimes they break us down. But I think if you get nothing else from my part of this training, like one of the most important things is to be gentle with yourself and not judge yourself, because we all have these feelings and thoughts at some point in our lives. And so I think taking the time to be gentle with yourself and not judge yourself so much on, oh man, I'm in this rut, or I'm not at this place that I should be, or I'm not thinking these things that I should be. You know what? Like, it all serves a purpose and it's there for a reason. So I think if we take the time to acknowledge that instead of just trying to shove it to the side, it can make a big difference for us. And so, again, one of those things that we want to kind of have in the back of your mind is, where can you use those positive affirmations or imagery to help your feelings become a little bit more pleasant? Sometimes all it takes is one, and then you have the ripple effect that comes out of that, right? So, okay, well, I dropped this one good thing into the bucket, and even though that doesn't seem significant, it made these things a little bit more bearable. And now I can deal with these, and now I can deal with these, and it kind of ripples out. So physical and behavioral responses, I think, are another thing that deserves a lot of attention. And Terry will get into a lot more of this because she's like the mindfulness guru at this point. But paying a little bit more attention to some of your physical signs of things, because I think a lot of the times we have a lot of these things that can go in combination that just kind of go ignored. And we don't even recognize the effect that they're having until it's gotten to the point where it's like, okay, geez, I'm overwhelmed. But sometimes just paying attention to your breathing, like, I'm gonna slow things down a little bit and actually like pay attention to my breathing. Am I breathing really heavy? Or do I need to slow things down a little bit more to give me some time to deal with this stress that's going on in my life? And I'm not saying that we need, I know some people get it like, oh, this is very wooey, but like, I know that, but taking that time to do something very simple that's very little cost to you can have a major impact on your ability to refocus and reset. So, am I even breathing through my nose? Is my breathing deep or is it shallow? So slowing that down and focusing on that gets your mind off of all that other stuff that's going on, and it gives you more opportunity to recenter, reset, and readdress the things that are going on. Sleep is a big one, and I'll be honest with you, like, I'm horrible at monitoring my sleep. I'm a parent. I have other interests going on, and so sometimes at night, like, that's the only time that I give myself that opportunity. But like, how much sleep are you getting a night, and what does your sleep hygiene look like? You could get 10 hours of sleep, but if it's at 4-hour increments because you're waking up because you have to go do X, Y, and Z, you need to write this thought down, you need to go use the bathroom, whatever, it's not necessarily restful sleep. So paying a little bit more attention to how much time are you giving to re-energize yourself and reset things and fill that cup back up. Movement is another huge one. And it doesn't have to be going to the gym and lifting 50,000 pounds a day. It can just be, I'm gonna get out of my chair and walk around my house for a minute, or go up and down some stairs, or just walk outside and walk around my area for a minute. Whatever the case may be, any form of movement is good movement. So like, how much are you doing that during the day? Nutrition is another huge one. What fuel are you putting into your body? Are you putting something into your body that's going to help it function at a high level, or are you filling it with stuff that's probably not going to do you any favors later? So those are really important things to pay attention to. Self-expression is another one that I think goes overlooked a lot of times, because it's like, sometimes we don't give ourselves the opportunity to go to a colleague or go to somebody that we really care about and just talk about what's going on in our mind. It's like, I don't need any problem solving. I just need to vent. I just need this thing to get out of my head. So thinking about what works for you. How do you like to express yourself? What are some things that you can do to reduce that stress level, whether it's writing or talking or whatever the case may be? What works for you? Self-talk's another really big one, and this is one that I've had to work on quite a bit myself, where it's like, what messages are you sending yourself? Are you saying, I can't do this, there's no way I'll ever be able to do this, I'm stupid for even trying this, or are you saying, you know what, like, things happen, I messed up, but I'm working on it, and I'm giving myself permission to just exist in this space and continue to try and improve myself? Those self-affirmations and those positive messages that you can give yourself, they don't have to be, I'm not saying like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to be a superhero tomorrow. Like, that's not realistic. But what I can say is, you know what? I'm not going to be a superhero tomorrow, and I can't go fix everything for everybody. But what I can do is make sure I at least reach out to somebody, and I know that that's something that I can do, and I'm good at that. So finding those things that you can do to boost yourself up a little bit and get yourself back to where you want to be, that's the important part. So, things that we want you to ask yourself: are you speaking kindly and compassionately to yourself? Are you cutting yourself some slack and recognizing that you're human just like the rest of us? Or at least I would hope so. And then, would you speak to your best friend the way that you're speaking to yourself? So are you saying things to yourself that you would say to someone else? Because if not, maybe it's time to check that a little bit and say, you know what, like, maybe I need to be just a little bit kinder to myself. We're all our own worst critic. That's normal. But there comes a point where it's like, enough is enough. And then, reframing those negative thoughts, saying, you know what, like, yeah, maybe I messed up at this thing, but I'm going to do this different, or I can do this. So just things to think about.
All right, relationships. Haha. So as we know, relationships can be a very significant source of stress from time to time. They definitely have a major impact on our lives, whether that's positive or negative. So at this time, take a second just to assess your relationships in your life, family and friends. Which ones are supportive and loving? Are there people in your life that you're close to? And who are the people that you share both the good and the bad news with? And we all have these people. Who feels draining to you? Who taxes your energy? Where can boundaries be set? Can we improve our boundaries? Can we be more assertive? How fulfilling is our social life and activities with other people? And where can you be assertive rather than passive and aggressive? And then also, are you laughing with your friends? So laughing, we know, reduces stress. It's a very, very quick stress relief. It's a very good stress management technique is to laugh. But at this point, really think about your relationships because they can have a major impact on your source of stress. So right there is a great place to start to see who in your life, and we all have those people where they're like a small dose friends. Like, who do we need to maybe limit that time with? Where can we do a little bit better in our life? And what can we do? Where are we allowing people to walk all over us? And just really knowing what to do. Who triggers us a lot and what can we do about that? Okay. Oh, time management. Who here doesn't have like a huge to-do list all the time? And we know that if our schedule is too full or too unorganized, that can really stress us out. So this might be something to do, is to review your daily schedule, to really figure out what activities do you absolutely have to do, but what can you change around, do a different time, do a different way? What can you become more efficient at? What things can you delegate to somebody else? What things do you need to say no to? Because we all probably have, we're helpers by nature if we're in the education world. So, but where can we tweak that a little bit more? Which activities are not as important? Which ones just take too much time and which we just don't want to do? And where can we be more efficient? And we all hopefully have at least one really super organized friend. So don't be proud. Just have your friend look at your schedule for suggestions. Sometimes if we can get out of that zone a little bit, that rut, and we can have someone else think outside the box a little bit better because it's not their schedule, but they can see something that maybe we're not seeing. So, it definitely, we are social creatures and we need help from time to time. So there's no shame in reaching out and asking for help. What can I do better? All right, positivity. We all know that sometimes we have a tendency to see either the glass is half full or half empty. So we need to think about where can we shift our attitude to positive? Like as Drew said in an earlier slide, where can our thoughts change a little bit more so that we see the silver lining or the bright spot? Research has definitely proven that gratitude lowers stress and improves physical and psychological health. I know that's the way I start the day. I get my coffee ready and I write down 3 things that I'm grateful for, and I just get that space to start the day in a positive way. And so that gives me that time to just not think about my stress, but it just makes me happy. So just experiencing gratitude, showing gratitude, writing it down, saying it, those are all great ways to lower your stress. Letting go. What is out of your control? What are you holding on so tightly? Where are your attachments and what can you release? There's always those areas of life that we just get so attached. And what can we? And maybe this is a time when, we need a counselor or a therapist or a close friend or family member that can really help us think outside the box, because we've gotten into such a kind of a rut as far as how we're thinking all the time. We've got these knee-jerk reactions about how we're handling stress or that we're handling situations. Also, are we incorporating fun activities in our daily life? All of us should have some hobbies, interests, and passions, and try not to say I don't have time. It's very important to do something nice and fun and that you feel good about, and it's just your bright spot in your life. At least daily, near daily, if you can't do daily, but that's important. That's something that you don't have a life that's just so many obligations, that you really do something that's fun. And again, we're going to keep pushing the comedies. I know when I feel really heavy, I go to my Netflix. I'm like, I look for comedies or fun shows because I just want to laugh, or I look at fun videos on YouTube because I just want to laugh. So those are all things that you can do.
Resilience is huge. There's no other way to put it. And I think that we're all resilient by nature. I think one of our biggest strengths as human beings is our ability to adapt and overcome stressful situations. So I think recognizing that and knowing that, I've come through a lot already. So that's my evidence that I can do it, and I'm going to continue to do that. So what are some ways that you do that? Well, building social support is a huge one. Build your network. Find some people that are supportive beings around you. that you know are going to be with you, and lean on them just like they would lean on you. Know that crises are not impossible challenges to overcome, and accept change as a part of life. I mean, that's, if there's one constant in life, it's that things are going to change on us. So recognizing that and being willing to roll with the punches a little bit is a huge resource. Hope and optimism and taking care of yourself. I mean, all of these are very important. So I don't want to insult your all's intelligence by reading through all of these, but I mean, you get the drift.
Oh, mindfulness, my favorite. This is probably one of the best stress management tools we have. This is where we just totally change our thoughts and our feelings. Mindfulness is basically noticing our thoughts, feelings, and sensation in the present moment, the here and now. But here's the trick. We want to do that without attaching negative or judgmental thoughts. So it's a very, very simple concept, but it's not so easy. And I know right now, because the world is just crazy, and we don't want to get too far away from today. I say this often, peace is in the present. So we know that if we get too far in the future, we know that's an illusion. Our mind's making that up. And we know that it takes away from the joy that is in the moment. We're not going to enjoy our present because we're constantly worrying about something that may never happen. And I know sometimes, like my daughter says this, well, I'm preparing myself. Yeah, but it doesn't really work. So, and then as all the past as well, what do we need to grieve to move forward? And mindfulness is a way that we observe the moment with an attitude of kindness and curiosity, and we set an intention of compassion and healing rather than fixing. So self-care, very important. It's so important for educators. If you're a teacher, it has been shown to improve your emotional state, which affects your classroom and ultimately determines if you continue in the profession, because teachers have a very high burnout rate, which is basically emotional exhaustion. So it's really important that you take good care of yourself. And it's not always easy because you're drawn to a helping profession because you're a helper, but you've got to help yourself first. It's just like that analogy about the flight attendant telling you to put on your oxygen mask before you put it on anyone else. You can't give from an empty cup. You have to take care of yourself. And there's daily. It's really important to develop some sort of daily self-care activities. Like one thing I do is I try to go at lunch, like a 10-minute mindful walk, and I just breathe. I don't think about work. I don't think about what I'm worried about in the world right now. I just focus on my breath and my movement. And then when you want to think about self-care, you want to think about physical, emotional, spiritual, professional, psychological, and relationships.
And the last thing that we want to leave you all with is that it's okay to not feel okay. Ultimately, like, sometimes we're just going to have bad days, or we're going to have tough times in our life. I mean, COVID hasn't made things easy on anybody. And nobody has all the answers. So there's absolutely no shame in reaching out to somebody, some trusted person in your life. Or, if you've gotten to the point where things are just way too much, talking to a professional, there's no shame in that either. So we want to encourage you all, like, if you are feeling stressed, if you are feeling these things, please reach out to someone, because it makes a huge difference. And so with that, I'll stop my share and ask if there's any questions.
I haven't seen any questions in the chat. A lot of people just totally agreeing with you. The wonderful Miss Rebecca Reynolds was saying she really needed to hear so much of this today, and I think that was the general consensus. I mean, it's good to know, because it's beginning of the year is always a stressful time, whether that's good or bad, but it's always a lot, and then this year is probably different than I think anybody in education today has ever experienced. So definitely stressful, and it's great to hear that it's okay to think about yourself, what you're doing, what you're going through. If you can't work on something, get some help. Don't feel bad about asking.
Nope.
We're a team,
right.
And that's why we're on here. It's that support.
Yes.
Absolutely. We agree 100%.
Cooking. Janice Youngblood said cooking is very therapeutic. I got to agree. I really like to cook. My wife tends to bake, but it all adds,
Absolutely.
to that return.
Then you can go for a walk after, so it's okay.
Yes. Maybe not today, but yes, absolutely. All right. Well, thank you two. That was excellent. I truly enjoyed that.